quiet people are often misunderstood. The ones who listen more than they speak. The ones who notice every shift in mood, every hidden tension in a room, every emotion that others try to hide. For most of their lives, these people are seen as weak, too sensitive, too emotional, too kind for their own good. Many spend years carrying burdens that do not belong to them, offering support when nobody asks how they are doing, giving their energy to people who would never do the same in return. To the outside world, it can look like they are always losing. They forgive when others would walk away. They stay patient when others would fight back. They keep giving chance after chance, even when the outcome rarely changes. Because of this, many people assume they already know how the story ends. They believe empaths will always be the ones who get overlooked, underestimated, and taken for granted. But that assumption hides a powerful truth that only reveals itself with time. The most fascinating part of an empath's journey is not how they begin, it is how they transform. There comes a point, often much later in life, when years of emotional experience begin to create an entirely different person. The same sensitivity that once seemed like a weakness starts turning into a strength. The same kindness that attracted manipulation becomes protected by wisdom. The same person who once struggled to say no develops boundaries that cannot be crossed. And the people who were comfortable with the old version suddenly become uncomfortable with the new one. What changed? Why does this shift happen so often? Why do so many empaths seem to reach their true power years after everyone else appears to have found theirs? The answer is deeper than most people realize. While others may spend their lives avoiding difficult emotional lessons, empaths are forced to confront them again and again. Every disappointment leaves a mark. Every betrayal teaches a lesson. Every experience adds another layer of understanding about human nature. Over time, these lessons accumulate, slowly, quietly, almost invisibly. Then one day the results become impossible to ignore. The empath who once struggled to protect their peace becomes someone who can read intentions with remarkable accuracy. The person who once feared rejection becomes comfortable walking away from anyone who threatens their well-being. The individual who spent years seeking approval no longer needs it. This transformation does not happen overnight, and that is exactly why so many people fail to see it coming. What makes this even more interesting is that some of the strongest qualities found in mature empaths are rarely discussed. Most conversations focus on their compassion, their caring nature, or their emotional depth. Very few people talk about the resilience they develop after surviving years of emotional challenges. Very few people recognize how powerful emotional intelligence becomes when it is combined with experience. Even fewer understand why individuals who once seemed easy to influence often become the hardest people to manipulate later in life. There is a reason certain people become uncomfortable when an empath begins to change. There is a reason old relationships sometimes fall apart during this transformation, and there is a reason why many empaths eventually discover a level of confidence that feels completely different from ordinary confidence. It is not built on status, attention, or praise. It is built on hard-earned understanding. In this video, we are going to uncover why empaths often struggle in the early chapters of life, why pain becomes one of their greatest teachers, and how years of emotional experience can create a kind of strength that many people never develop. We will explore the hidden turning point that changes everything, the surprising reason empaths become more powerful with age, and why this growth can make certain people feel threatened. You will also discover how emotional awareness evolves into wisdom, why boundaries become one of the most important tools an empath can learn, and how the traits that once seemed like disadvantages often become their greatest advantages. Along the way, we will reveal several lesser-known truths about emotional growth that most people never connect to the empath experience. Stay with us until the very end, because the final insight may completely change the way you view sensitivity, strength, and personal power. The biggest reason empaths become unstoppable later in life is not what most people expect. In fact, it is often the exact opposite of what society teaches about success and confidence. Once you understand this hidden shift, many of the struggles, relationships, and challenges experienced by empaths begin to make far more sense. And if you see yourself in these patterns, you may discover that some of the qualities you once viewed as weaknesses are actually preparing you for a strength that has not fully revealed itself yet. Welcome to our channel, where we explore the deeper truths about human behavior, psychology, emotional growth, and personal transformation. If you enjoy thoughtful content that helps you understand yourself and the people around you, make sure to subscribe and join our growing community. Now let's begin. For many empaths, life begins with a challenge that most people cannot fully see, while others move through the world focused mainly on their own feelings. Empaths often find themselves carrying emotions from every direction. A tense conversation across the room can affect their mood. A friend's sadness can stay with them for hours. A family member's stress can feel like their own burden. From an early age, they learn to pay attention to emotional signals that many people overlook. They notice changes in tone. They sense when someone is upset even when that person says everything is fine. They pick up on discomfort, frustration, fear, and disappointment without needing an explanation. At first, this sensitivity seems like a gift. It helps them connect with people. It makes them caring and compassionate. But as life becomes more complicated, that same sensitivity often starts feeling like a heavy weight. While others can leave difficult situations behind, empaths tend to carry them home. They replay conversations in their minds. They think about how others are feeling. They wonder if they could have helped more. Over time, this creates a pattern where other people's emotional needs begin to take priority over their own. Because empaths feel things so deeply, they often develop a strong desire to keep everyone around them happy. Peace becomes important. Harmony becomes important. They dislike seeing people hurt. They dislike conflict. They dislike tension. As a result, many spend years trying to fix problems that were never theirs to solve. When friends argue, they step in as mediators. When family members struggle, they become the source of support. When coworkers complain, they listen patiently. They become the person everyone turns to during difficult times. On the surface, this may look admirable, and in many ways it is. But there is another side to this role that often goes unnoticed. The more an empath becomes responsible for everyone else's emotions, the less attention they give to their own. They become experts at understanding others while remaining disconnected from their own needs. They know how to comfort people, encourage people, and help people heal, yet they rarely ask for the same support in return. Slowly, they begin learning a dangerous lesson. They start believing that their value comes from what they can do for others rather than who they are. This pattern becomes even stronger because empaths often avoid conflict whenever possible. They know how painful arguments can feel. They understand how hurtful words can linger. Instead of expressing frustration, they stay quiet. Instead of setting boundaries, they compromise. Instead of defending themselves, they try to understand the other person's perspective. While this approach may reduce tension in the moment, it often creates bigger problems over time. People begin expecting endless patience. They begin assuming the empath will always be available. Some even learn they can push limits without facing consequences. The empath may recognize that something feels wrong, but speaking up feels uncomfortable. Saying no feels uncomfortable. Disappointing someone feels uncomfortable. And because of that discomfort, they continue sacrificing their own peace to protect the comfort of others. As the years pass, emotional exhaustion becomes a constant companion. Many empaths reach a point where they feel tired in a way that rest alone cannot fix. Their bodies may be present, but their minds feel overwhelmed. They carry worries that belong to other people. They absorb negativity from relationships, workplaces, and social circles. They spend so much time supporting others that they forget how to support themselves. What makes this even more difficult is that many people around them never realize what is happening. They see the empath as strong because the empath keeps showing up. They see the empath as dependable because the empath keeps helping. They do not see the emotional cost hidden beneath the surface. They do not see the late nights spent overthinking. They do not see the anxiety caused by trying to meet everyone's expectations. They do not see the growing frustration of constantly giving while receiving very little in return. During these early stages of life, sensitivity often feels like a disadvantage. The world tends to reward confidence, assertiveness, and competition. Meanwhile, empaths are navigating life with heightened emotional awareness. They care deeply about consequences. They think about how their actions affect others. They hesitate before making decisions that might hurt someone. In environments where aggression is celebrated and emotional awareness is ignored, this can make them feel out of place. They may watch less compassionate people achieve success and wonder why kindness seems to create more struggles than rewards. They may question whether their sensitivity is holding them back. They may even try to suppress it, believing they need to become harder, colder, or less caring to survive. Yet no matter how much they try to change, their natural awareness remains. They continue noticing things others miss. They continue feeling things others ignore. And even though this creates challenges, it is quietly preparing them for a transformation that has not yet arrived. The very thing that makes an empath struggle early in life becomes the foundation of their future strength. What many people fail to understand is that every difficult experience leaves behind valuable information. While others move through life without paying close attention to emotional patterns, empaths absorb every lesson in remarkable detail. The betrayals hurt deeply. The disappointments hurt deeply, the broken trust hurts deeply, but those experiences also become teachers. At first, an empath may enter relationships believing that everyone has good intentions. They may assume that kindness will always be returned with kindness. They may believe honesty naturally inspires honesty. Then reality begins teaching harder lessons. They discover that not everyone values loyalty. They discover that not everyone respects generosity. They discover that some people see compassion as an opportunity rather than a virtue. These realizations can be painful, especially for someone who naturally looks for the good in others. Many empaths experience situations where they give far more than they receive. They become the friend who is always available but rarely receives support when needed. They become the partner who invests endless energy into a relationship while the other person contributes very little. They become the family member who carries responsibilities nobody else wants. For a long time, they accept these imbalances because they care deeply. They convince themselves that things will improve. They tell themselves that understanding and patience will solve the problem. Sometimes it does. Many times it does not. Instead, they find themselves feeling used, overlooked, or unappreciated. Each experience leaves an emotional mark, but it also leaves behind a lesson. Then come the manipulative relationships. These experiences often become major turning points. Manipulative people are frequently drawn toward individuals who are compassionate and understanding. They recognize someone who wants to help. They recognize someone who struggles to say no. They recognize someone who is willing to give second chances. At first, the manipulation may be subtle, a little guilt, a little pressure, a little emotional control disguised as vulnerability. The empath may not notice immediately because their focus remains on helping rather than protecting themselves. But eventually, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. The relationship begins draining more energy than it provides. The empath feels trapped between their desire to help and their growing awareness that they are being taken advantage of. Broken trust becomes another powerful teacher. When trust is shattered, empaths often spend a long time trying to understand why. They analyze conversations, they revisit memories, they search for explanations. While this process can be painful, it also develops an important skill. It forces them to study human behavior more closely. They begin noticing inconsistencies. They begin paying attention to actions instead of promises. They begin realizing that words and intentions are not always the same thing. Every disappointment sharpens their awareness. Every betrayal improves their ability to recognize warning signs. Every painful lesson strengthens their understanding of human nature. Eventually, emotional burnout arrives. This stage is often unavoidable. After years of giving, helping, forgiving, and carrying emotional burdens, many empaths reach a point where they simply cannot continue living the same way. The exhaustion becomes too great. The frustration becomes too great. The imbalance becomes too obvious to ignore. And while burnout feels overwhelming, it often becomes the beginning of change. The empath starts questioning long-held beliefs. They start asking why they are responsible for everyone else's happiness. They start wondering why they constantly place themselves last. They begin recognizing patterns that once seemed normal. Most people learn through advice. Empaths often learn through experience. Advice can be ignored, experience cannot. The lessons become part of who they are. Over time, they start seeing connections that others miss. They notice recurring behaviors. They recognize familiar warning signs. They identify unhealthy dynamics much faster than before. Their awareness grows sharper with every challenge. Their understanding grows deeper with every setback. Slowly, the confusion that once dominated their lives begins transforming into clarity. Then comes one of the most important turning points of all, the moment they stop seeking approval. For many empaths, this realization arrives after years of trying to earn acceptance through kindness. They finally understand that no amount of sacrifice can make everyone happy. No amount of giving can guarantee appreciation. No amount of understanding can force someone else to change. This realization feels uncomfortable at first because it challenges beliefs they have carried for much of their lives, yet it also brings freedom. They begin recognizing that their responsibility ends with their own actions. They stop feeling obligated to rescue everyone. They stop assuming ownership of problems that belong to other people. This shift changes everything. The empath begins understanding that kindness and self-sacrifice are not the same thing. Helping someone does not require abandoning personal boundaries. Caring about someone does not require accepting mistreatment. Being compassionate does not require tolerating disrespect. These distinctions may seem simple, but they are often life-changing. For the first time, the empath begins protecting their own energy with the same care they once reserved for everyone else. Along the way, they also start letting go of guilt. For years, guilt may have controlled many of their decisions. Guilt for saying no, guilt for choosing themselves, guilt for disappointing others. But eventually they realize that guilt is not always a sign that they are doing something wrong. Sometimes guilt appears simply because they are doing something unfamiliar. Setting boundaries feels uncomfortable because they have spent years without them. Prioritizing themselves feels uncomfortable because they are not used to it. Yet with practice, these actions become easier. They become comfortable disappointing people when necessary. Not because they enjoy it, not because they have become selfish, but because they understand an important truth. A healthy life cannot be built on constant self-neglect. They realize that protecting their peace is not cruelty. It is responsibility. They learn that saying no to others sometimes means saying yes to themselves. This is the stage where people begin saying the empath has changed. What many fail to realize is that the empath has not become colder. The empath has become wiser. The endless need for approval begins fading away. Decisions become less influenced by fear and more influenced by self-respect. Relationships become healthier because they are no longer built entirely on one-sided sacrifice. And as this transformation continues, another remarkable ability starts emerging. Years of observing emotions, studying behavior, surviving disappointments, and learning from experience begin developing a skill that many people never fully master: emotional intelligence. The empath who once absorbed emotions without understanding them now starts understanding emotions without being controlled by them. They become highly aware of what motivates people. They notice the difference between sincerity and performance. They recognize when words do not match actions. They detect tension before conflict becomes visible. They sense dishonesty long before evidence appears. Instead of reacting immediately, they observe. Instead of becoming overwhelmed, they pay attention. Instead of getting pulled into every emotional storm, they step back and evaluate what is actually happening. Their sensitivity has not disappeared, it has evolved. What once felt like a weakness is becoming a powerful form of awareness. They begin reading situations with greater clarity. They understand hidden motives more easily. They recognize emotional patterns that others overlook. And because of this, the empath who once absorbed every emotion now understands emotions. That changes everything. One of the biggest changes that happens in the life of an empath is not becoming stronger, smarter, or more successful. It is becoming harder to manipulate. This transformation often happens so gradually that even the empath does not notice it at first. For years, they may have been the person who gave people the benefit of the doubt, the person who kept listening after others stopped listening, the person who stayed when everyone else walked away. They believed in second chances, sometimes third chances, sometimes even more than that. They wanted to see the good in people. They wanted to believe that kindness could solve most problems. They wanted to believe that if they showed enough understanding, others would eventually do the same. But life has a way of teaching lessons that cannot be avoided. Every broken promise, every one-sided relationship, every moment of being taken for granted slowly begins changing how they view the world. Not in a negative way, not in a bitter way, in a realistic way. As empaths grow older, they begin recognizing a truth that once felt difficult to accept. Not everyone deserves unlimited access to their energy. Not everyone deserves endless patience. Not everyone deserves repeated opportunities to cause harm. This realization becomes the starting point for stronger boundaries. At first, boundaries feel uncomfortable. They may even feel wrong. An empath who has spent years saying yes suddenly starts saying no. An empath who once explained every decision begins keeping some decisions private. An empath who once tolerated unhealthy behavior begins refusing to participate in it. These changes often feel unnatural because they go against habits that have existed for years. Yet every time a boundary is respected, confidence grows. Every time personal peace is protected, self-respect grows. Every time they refuse to sacrifice themselves for someone else's comfort, they discover a new level of inner strength. What makes boundaries so powerful is that they reveal the true nature of relationships. People who genuinely care will usually respect them. People who benefited from the absence of boundaries often react very differently. Suddenly, the empath starts hearing complaints. Suddenly, people begin questioning why they have changed. Suddenly, the same individuals who never respected limits become frustrated when limits finally appear. This reaction surprises many empaths at first. They spent years trying to be supportive, understanding, and available. Yet the moment they prioritize their own well-being, resistance appears. The reason is simple. Boundaries remove opportunities for manipulation. Boundaries make emotional control more difficult. Boundaries force people to interact with the empath on healthier terms. Another major shift happens when the need for validation begins fading away. Earlier in life, many empaths tie their self-worth to how others feel about them. They want approval. They want acceptance. They want reassurance that they are doing the right thing. Because they care deeply about relationships, criticism can feel devastating. Rejection can feel devastating. Disappointing someone can feel devastating. As a result, they sometimes make choices based on fear rather than truth. They stay in situations longer than they should. They tolerate behavior they should not tolerate. They remain silent when they should speak. Over time, however, experience changes their perspective. They start understanding that approval is not the same as respect. They realize that trying to please everyone is impossible. They learn that no matter how kind, patient, or generous they are, some people will still misunderstand them. This realization creates freedom. The empath no longer feels responsible for managing everyone's opinion. They stop chasing validation because they no longer need constant confirmation of their worth. Their confidence begins coming from within rather than from the reactions of others. This change is powerful because manipulation often depends on insecurity. Manipulative people know how to use guilt, fear, and approval as tools. They know how to make someone question themselves. They know how to create doubt. But when an empath develops a strong sense of self-worth, those tactics lose their power. The emotional buttons that once controlled them no longer produce the same response. At the same time, fear of rejection starts losing its grip. Earlier in life, rejection may have felt like proof of failure. It may have felt like evidence that something was wrong. Many empaths spend years trying to avoid rejection at all costs. They adapt themselves to fit expectations. They hide opinions. They suppress needs. They make themselves smaller to keep relationships intact. Then one day they realize that rejection is not always a loss. Sometimes rejection is protection. Sometimes rejection removes people who were never meant to stay. Sometimes rejection creates space for healthier connections. This understanding changes how they approach life. They stop making decisions based on fear. They stop shrinking themselves to gain acceptance. They stop viewing every disagreement as a threat. Because of this growth, walking away from toxic situations becomes easier. Not easy, but easier. The empath who once stayed too long begins recognizing when a situation is harming them. They notice patterns sooner. They trust their instincts sooner. They act sooner. Instead of spending years hoping someone will change, they pay attention to what is actually happening. Instead of waiting for endless promises to become reality, they evaluate actions. Instead of sacrificing themselves to keep a relationship alive, they ask whether that relationship deserves their energy. This ability to walk away is often one of the clearest signs of emotional maturity. It does not come from anger, it comes from understanding. The moment an empath becomes difficult to manipulate, many existing relationships begin changing. Some become stronger, others begin falling apart. People who once controlled them lose influence. The guilt that used to work no longer works. The pressure that used to work no longer works. The emotional games that once created confusion become easier to recognize. For the first time, the empath sees situations clearly rather than emotionally. They recognize patterns instead of excuses. They recognize behavior instead of promises. They recognize reality instead of potential. This is often when conflict begins. Ironically, the conflict does not usually start because the empath becomes aggressive. It starts because they stop being available for unhealthy dynamics. People become comfortable with predictable roles. They expect the empath to always forgive. They expect the empath to always understand. They expect the empath to always adjust. When those expectations are no longer met, frustration appears. Some people react with anger. Some react with guilt. Some react with criticism. Some try to convince the empath that they are becoming selfish. Others claim they have changed for the worse. Yet beneath these reactions lies a deeper issue. The balance of power has shifted. This shift explains why personal growth can make certain people uncomfortable. The empath is not becoming cruel. The empath is becoming unavailable for manipulation. To healthy people, this change looks like growth. To unhealthy people, it looks like resistance. And resistance is rarely welcomed by those who benefited from unlimited access. Many empaths spend years wondering why certain relationships become more difficult after they start respecting themselves. The answer often has little to do with the empath and everything to do with the expectations that once existed. As this transformation continues, another interesting change takes place. The empath stops explaining everything. Earlier in life, they often felt responsible for making everyone understand their choices. If they said no, they explained why. If they needed space, they explained why. If they set a boundary, they explained why. They believed that enough explanation would create understanding. Over time, they discover that some people do not misunderstand because of a lack of information. They misunderstand because they dislike the answer. No amount of explanation can solve that problem. This realization allows the empath to become more comfortable with simple decisions. They no longer feel obligated to justify every action. They no longer spend hours defending boundaries that should be respected automatically. At the same time, they stop chasing approval. Earlier in life, approval may have felt like security. It may have felt like proof that they were doing the right thing. But eventually, they understand that approval can disappear for reasons completely unrelated to truth. People may disapprove because expectations were not met. People may disapprove because they lost control. People may disapprove because change makes them uncomfortable. Once the empath understands this, approval loses much of its importance. Integrity becomes more valuable than popularity. Peace becomes more valuable than acceptance. They also stop overgiving. This change surprises many people because generosity was always one of their defining traits. Yet mature empaths learn an important distinction. Giving is healthy. Overgiving is not. Giving from abundance feels different from giving from obligation. Giving from love feels different from giving from guilt. The empath begins paying attention to balance. They begin asking whether effort is being returned. They begin noticing whether appreciation exists. They stop pouring endless energy into people who continuously take without contributing. Their generosity remains, but it becomes more intentional. Another noticeable change is their refusal to tolerate disrespect. Earlier in life, they may have excused poor behavior because they understood the reasons behind it. They knew someone had a difficult past. They knew someone was struggling. They knew someone was hurting. While this understanding is compassionate, it sometimes led them to excuse behavior that should never have been accepted. As they mature, they learn that understanding someone does not require accepting mistreatment. Empathy remains. Tolerance for disrespect disappears. They can care about someone and still maintain distance. They can understand someone and still say no. They can wish someone well without allowing that person access to their life. This growth often feels threatening to people who benefited from the old version of the empath. Not because the empath became harsh, not because the empath became selfish, because access has been removed. The emotional resources that were once available without limits now have boundaries. The patience that once had no end now has standards. The forgiveness that once arrived automatically now requires accountability. People who relied on endless chances suddenly discover there are consequences. People who relied on guilt suddenly discover it no longer works. Power shifts. And not everyone likes that. Yet while some relationships become more difficult, the empath experiences a level of peace that was previously impossible. They spend less time overthinking. They spend less time trying to fix everyone. They spend less time carrying responsibilities that were never theirs. The energy once spent managing other people's emotions becomes available for personal growth. This is where one of the most remarkable transformations begins to emerge. A mature empath develops a quiet confidence that is often misunderstood. It is not loud, it is not attention-seeking, it does not demand recognition. In fact, many people fail to notice it at first because it looks different from the confidence society usually celebrates. It is not based on status. It is not based on appearance. It is not based on proving superiority. It comes from experience. It comes from surviving difficult lessons. It comes from facing pain and learning from it rather than running from it. This confidence allows the empath to remain calm in situations that once felt overwhelming. They no longer panic when someone disagrees with them. They no longer crumble under criticism. They no longer feel responsible for fixing every problem in the room. Their emotional stability grows because they have spent years understanding emotions rather than avoiding them. While others may react impulsively, the mature empath often remains patient. They know that not every battle deserves attention. They know that not every opinion deserves a response. They know that silence can be more powerful than argument. Their intuition also becomes remarkably strong. Years of observing people create a deep awareness of patterns. They notice inconsistencies. They notice hidden tension. They notice when someone's actions and words do not align. This intuition is not magic. It is the result of experience. It is the result of paying attention. It is the result of countless lessons gathered over a lifetime. While others focus only on what is being said, the empath notices what is being avoided. While others focus on appearances, the empath notices behavior. Patience becomes another hidden strength. Earlier in life, patience may have come from fear of conflict. Now it comes from wisdom. They understand that some situations require time. They understand that rushing decisions often creates problems. They understand that emotional reactions rarely produce the best outcomes. This patience allows them to remain steady when others become overwhelmed. Years of experience also create emotional resilience. Difficult situations still hurt. Disappointment still hurts. Loss still hurts. The difference is that they no longer break in the same way. They recover faster. They adapt faster. They trust themselves more. Life has tested them repeatedly, and every challenge has strengthened their ability to keep moving forward. Unlike confidence built on ego, theirs is built on survival. It is built on lessons learned through hardship. It is built on wisdom earned through experience. It is built on understanding gained through years of observation. They know who they are. They understand what they value. They understand what they will accept and what they will not accept. They no longer need permission to be themselves. They no longer need approval to trust their instincts. They no longer need validation to recognize their worth. And as this quiet strength continues growing, it begins shaping every part of their life in ways that few people fully understand. After everything we have explored, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. Sensitivity was never the weakness. Feeling deeply was never the problem. Caring about people was never the problem. The real struggle was believing that compassion required self-sacrifice. For years, many empaths carry the weight of other people's emotions while ignoring their own. They give endlessly, forgive endlessly, and try endlessly to keep peace in every relationship. But sooner or later, life teaches a lesson that changes everything. True strength is not found in how much pain you can carry for others. True strength is found in knowing where your responsibility ends and where someone else's begins. What makes empaths so powerful later in life is not that they stop caring. In many ways, they care more deeply than ever before. The difference is that their compassion finally gains direction. Their kindness gains wisdom. Their generosity gains boundaries. They no longer confuse love with self-neglect. They no longer confuse patience with tolerance for disrespect. They no longer confuse understanding someone with allowing that person unlimited access to their peace. The same heart that once made them vulnerable becomes one of their greatest strengths because it is now protected by experience, self-respect, and clarity. This is why so many people underestimate empaths early in life. They see the kindness but not the resilience being built beneath it. They see the sensitivity but not the awareness being developed through every challenge. They see the struggles but not the lessons hidden inside them. Then one day the empath who once doubted themselves begins trusting their instincts. The empath who once feared rejection becomes comfortable standing alone. The empath who once gave away all their energy learns how to protect it. And the empath who once carried everyone else's burdens finally learns how to carry themselves first. That is when everything changes. The people who only knew the old version may not understand the transformation. Some may even resist it. But growth is not about making everyone comfortable. Growth is about becoming who you were always meant to be. And for many empaths, their greatest chapter does not begin when they learn to care more. It begins when they learn to care for themselves too. The empath who once carried everyone else's emotional weight eventually discovers something powerful. The strongest heart in the room is not the one that gives endlessly. It's the one that knows when to stop. If this video resonated with you, take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear about your experiences and what part of this journey connected with you the most. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who may need to hear this message today. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.